Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show. I am your host, Chat Daddy, and I'm honored to be here with you guys on this beautiful hump day. It is the middle part of the week. I hope you and yours have had a great week. Yet again, beautiful weather here in the Chicagoland area. Would be a perfect summer day, but it is actually the second day of fall 2020. Can you believe it's fall already? I cannot, but it is. I have another great show for your viewing and listening pleasure this evening. Tonight, our show is dedicated to all things Black Chicago. We have an international filmmaker. I also consider him a griot of Chicago Black history. Mr. Pamon Rami will stop by tonight and we'll talk about everything from the Great Migration to our present 2020 year to the future of Black Chicago. You know, there's a massive exodus of Black people leaving Chicago. And then later on in the show, we'll talk about how Chicago are you? What are some of your fondest memories of Chicago? How many of you all remember Fun Town, 95th and Stony Island Avenue? How many of you all remember Arthur Treacher's Fish and Chips? As you guys all know, Ronnie's Steakhouse just went out of business recently. Larry's, where everybody went for their graduation or prom luncheon or some type of celebration to have prime rib. That was a big thing to do. They're closing after 64 years. So tonight, our entire show is dedicated to my beloved city, the city of Chicago. All right. Well, our co-host tonight is a gentleman who he loves Chicago just as much as I do. He's a media professional, radio, you name it. He is the Boom Shakalaka, but his, radio name is the one and only Mr. Chris Bates. I just call him Boom Shakalaka. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. My brother from another mother, the one and only Mr. Chris Bates. Yay. Hey, brother.
Thank you. You have overcome, for I am here. Boom Shakalaka. How you doing, Chat Daddy? Arch
Yes, thank you, Boom. Can you hear me clearly? Is the sound okay? My audio is good. It's not breaking up, is it?
It sounds good now.
Okay, good. I don't know what that beginning is about with this. I'm fighting with these people. Look, they better get this together before I had to put I almost had to put my foot in somebody's you know what today, but yes, okay. So glad you're here tonight. How you feel, Bass? What's new? What's going on? You got a new show you've started, and I'm impressed. You interviewed the legendary Mr. Lee Michaels today, who is really an icon in the radio business. So tell us all about this new show you've started.
Oh, well, thank you, Art. I mean, I decided to take my programming and divide it into sections. So I still have Baseline that I created, my talk show that I do every Friday at 4 p.m. Central. But I wanted to do a separate show for interviews and call it CBI. So I always nickname my shows. So it's called CBI, Chris Bates Interviews, ... So the first person that came to mind is my personal radio guru, just a great guy all around, Lee Michaels. And so Lee was very kind to come on. We did our show just now, The Maiden Voyage at 4 p.m., looking at airing it every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central. And it was just a great time. I mean, when you're around what I call the masters, see, he didn't want to hear it when I talking to him, because he don't like all that sugarcoating stuff, but it's true. And you know this firsthand, I've had a conversation before about people who, paved the way for you. Mm-hmm. When you're in the presence of greatness, you can't help but say, I want to acknowledge who you are now, because I don't want to be one day say I could have, would have, should have. Mm-hmm. So I know you don't like the gravy. I give him extra gravy. Mm-hmm. And we had Harold's chicken. I give him extra mild sauce. Mm-hmm. I do what I can because I want to honor him while he's here. So, it's funny you mention that, because we had a good time and we went back and forth, and we started off talking about the video he posted real quick about we need to get our act together as a people. And that moved me to have him on as a guest. We talked about that. We talked about the importance of going out to vote. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, here in Illinois, early voting starts September 24th. That'll be tomorrow. So again, the presence of that, and just overall good time. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I could ask you, now I was going to ask you behind the mic, would you do me the honor of coming on CBI so I can interview you?
Man, are you kidding me? I was gonna kind of put myself out there since I'm my own publicist and agent and all of that, but look, I almost feel like you just asked me to marry you. Absolutely, yes, yes. Yes, right. I'm like, yes, I'll get out of yes, yes. Oh no, brother, I would be honored. Whatever it is that I can do to help someone, you've always helped me. You've never said no when I've asked you to co-host. I respect you a great deal. You've always shown so much respect to me, and we've got to help each other in this industry. I'm new to this game as far as the whole radio thing, but I would be honored to sit down and be one of your guests, and no questions are off limit. That's me. I'm an open book. So yes, right. Please, and just long as you don't accuse me of stalking you.
No, I could never accuse you, but apparently, right. I read your Facebook status earlier, and I'm like, wait, what the hell's going on around here? Could you please elaborate what the hell happened to you, sir?
Okay, so as you guys all know, whenever I'm on the road, I always post selfies of my mask and, wishing everybody a great day, be well, all of that. Well, ever since we've had the looting and rioting and the pandemics, I am now a suburban shopper. So today was my suburban shopping day. So I had stopped, it's also my day for fast food, just any of the suburban things you do. So I had stopped, right. Gotten fast food, and I was driving, headed into the lot of the Walmart, and there was a lady in front of me in a car, and again, you notice the car in front of you, so if they stop, you don't hit the brakes, any of that. I'm always singing in the car, I'm doing the Cabbage Patch, just all kind of things in the car, right? So right. She's looking for a parking space, I'm looking for a parking space, so I'm behind her, and looking and waiting. So we turn, go down another row, I'm kind of looking, watching people come out, she's looking, watching people come out. So we kind of did the loop around a couple of times because people were coming out the store. So right. When she finally got, we were coming the opposite direction in the parking lot, and I saw a space and she eyed it as well. And because she was an older lady, I went on and let her take the parking space. I went on around, and the Lord bless me, it was a parking space a spot over from her, but the other lane, the other lot, the other side. So I'm facing right. her, but we're one space apart. Next thing I know, she's taking pictures of me, and I'm now eating my food. I'm not thinking anything about this lady, but I notice out of the corner of my eye, but I'm used to that. People recognize me. Oh, are you Chat Daddy? That type of thing. It didn't bother me. Next right. thing I know, I see the police come up to her. She's flagged police down, and she tells the police officer that I am stalking her. And so the police officer walks over to my car. He was very polite, very nice. And he says, sir, this lady feels that you're stalking her. And I said, stalking her? I said, why would I stalk her? I said, the funniest thing is we both turned in a lot at the same time. I said, how you're looking for parking spaces, you just kind of turn with people. You see a massive amount of people come out. You follow the people to kind of get the parking space. He said, sir, no problem. I'm sorry. So I finished my food. I go to get out the car. She's steady sitting in the car, steady looking at me, whatever. So when we both get out the car, I said, ma'am, I said, what is wrong with you? I said, why would you think I am stalking you? I said, there's no way in the world that I would want to stalk you. I don't even know you, man. Well, I'm being stalked. I'm being stalked. I said, well, ma'am, I'm not the stalker. I said, now that policeman you held, I might stalk his fine behind, but you, why would I stalk you? Ma'am, I you know what I'm saying? You're an old lady. I'm not trying to stalk you. I'm trying to get in Walmart. So, right. That kind of set me off. And so here's the caveat to all of this. So, of course, I call my friend, tell him, he calmed me down. I tell another friend. So everybody was like, child, please don't, what it was a Karen, wasn't it? It was a Karen. I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but she was black. This was a black lady. This was a black lady whose middle name, I'm sure, was May. Hattie Mae, Sadie Mae, Lula Mae. You get what I'm saying? Like right. You got to be kidding me, ma'am, that you think I would stalk you.
Yeah.
So that's what happened to me today. I just think everybody's on edge right now. I just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I go along with that. Yeah.
I
No,
just
you're
think
right.
we live in a world now where everybody is just, on pins and needles. Because I wanted to say to her so bad, ma'am, if somebody is stalking you, where are your grandkids? Where's your children, or somebody that can bring you to Walmart and help you to, get through this situation? But no, ma'am, I'm not trying to stalk you. Now, that cop, that's a whole different story. But no, I ain't trying to stalk you. What is you doing? So
Look. I think all of us at one point can share like an old person story. Now, let me say this up front before I tell the story. I am not bashing older people. I'm not. I'm not bashing the elderly. But some of y'all out there living foul, and y'all know who y'all old asses are. I mean, they are. I mean, you're out there gumming, take your teeth out your mouth, and doing God knows what. I've been hit on by old women, like I call them Grugers. They're grandma Grugers. Grugers, right. I've been hit on and the nerve to call me tenderoni. I am 53 years old.
Right.
If I'm 53 and I'm a tenderoni, then how old is you?
Right. You got to be 103. Right. Exactly.
Exactly right. So if you want to get down with a Gruger, that's none of my business. But some people, I guess, have a high opinion of themselves, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Art. We are on pins and needles. We're nervous. We don't know what's going on out here nowadays. We got to take precautions, things of that nature. But sometimes I think sometimes people might think too much of themselves to be stalker material.
Well, I don't even know if it was she thought a sexual thing as much as maybe, I don't know. And she could be having some mental issues or whatever the case may be. But
yeah.
Me following you in a parking lot trying to find a parking space, like, girl, you got to be kidding me. I'm not stalking you. And really, you stole my parking space. And because I am a gentleman and I saw you was an older lady, I went on and let you have that parking space. Now, had it been Pookie and them, they probably would have got out and punctured grandma's tires. But I'm not that person. I'm trying to go in here and get my little items and come on back out this store. But yes, that happened to me today. And I just was absolutely floored because I woke up today in a good spirit, good energy, just like I am on this show now. But to be accused of stalking this woman in the Walmart parking lot today, I just was, I was like, you got to be kidding me, Grandma. You think I'm stalking you?
Yeah, I would probably go with fear. Maybe I'll go along with her probably being fearful than anything else. But it does set you back a little bit.
Yeah, it really does because, I've never been that person. You know what I'm saying? Like I've had situations where people have been intimidated by my height, my size, just my hair, any of those things. But I'm not that person. And then, a lot of times when people do recognize me in public, they do get a little, oh my God, or I can't believe it's you. And even when she was taking the pictures, I'm thinking she gonna go back and tell her little bridge playing club, girl, I saw Chat Daddy at the Walmart. No, this woman said, no, I have a stalker and I thought you was the stalker stalking me. No, ma'am, not today, Grandma. Not today. Not today, Grandma.
I gotta go with the fear factor thing. Like, for example, I was in the store once, and they have on the floor the 6 feet rule. But where she now, I have my buggy like everybody else, and I'm trying to ask her a question because where she was in line, she was also blocking some stuff I wanted to get. So I want to ask her, excuse me, ma'am, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. And she's screaming at me. And I'm like, God damn it, Lo. Again, I just want to ask you a question about because we're blocking some stuff I want to get because you're in line. But she was just I think I got to go with the fear factor thing.
Okay. All right. For those of you all that are just joining us and asking, was it a Karen? It was a black lady. It was a lady who I'm sure her middle name was May, Lula May, Bertha May, Hattie May. She was fearful, thinking that I was stalking her in the Walmart parking lot in the south suburb today, when we were actually both circling around looking for a parking space. And she and I both kind of got to a space at the same time. Because she was an old lady, I, let her take it. And we ended up kind of being next to each other in different directions. I was in the next aisle and she flagged down a police officer, took my picture and everything, and told him that she thought I was stalking her. So I was so outdone, I didn't know what to do. So, all right, well, let's move on with today's top news story. So glad that you guys are tuned in tonight. On this show, we always give you the latest COVID-19 update information. The Illinois Department of Public Health announced today 1,848 newly diagnosed cases of coronavirus here in the state. Unfortunately, we had 22 additional deaths, raising our statewide tally of cases to now 279,114, with our death total now being 8,508. And in the state of Illinois, in the United States, we now have over 200,000 cases, which that's a lot of people dying. That really is. Governor Pritzker said today that the Northwest Illinois region, which is the Rockford and Northern Illinois University area, Genoa, DeKalb, all of those particular places that border Wisconsin and Iowa, they could be on a no-no list very soon, because there is a uptick in numbers in those particular areas. The 9-county region had a 7.5% test positive rate as of Wednesday. So for a long time, they kind of thought it was Chicago, and now we are not in this case. So it's Northern Illinois, that Genoa, DeKalb, Rockford area, anything that borders Iowa and Wisconsin. And as you guys all know, the mayor has put the state of Wisconsin back on the list of places that we cannot travel. So so that's that. A lot of you all are just joining us. The stalking story has been told. You guys will just have to go back to YouTube and see it later. The Real Chat Daddy Show on YouTube and Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to the page, but you really do need to hear what happened to me today with the stalking story, because no, I was not stalking the lady at all. So all right, Base, with that being said, everybody is now talking about Breonna Taylor. Say her name. We want justice for Breonna Taylor. Today, a grand jury announced that Hankinson, one of the 3 officers who fired shots while executing a no-knock warrant at Taylor's home back on March 13th, will be charged in connection with the Taylor case. The 2 other officers were not charged. A warrant has been issued for Hankinson's arrest, and her bond is set at $15,000 cash. And so now, Chris, everybody is up in arms. I am asking Chicago, the state of Illinois, peace be still. I am asking our country, peace be still. No, it was not fair what happened today, but it's a lot to deal with this particular situation. Chris, what's your take on all of this?
They do these things because they can. And what I mean by that is the fact that someone like Breonna Taylor, you're not even safe in your own home.
No.
The whole coming in, shooting up, and here's a person always, just trying to do what's right, being an EMT, providing service for the public, a fantastic young lady who would not even see the rest of her life because of a mistake. And it's a grand mistake that should be taken care of completely. Okay, you can't always throw money at a situation, because the settlement, as you know, was $12 million. And I know they put in amendments there to let everybody know they're going to make changes here and changes there. But that's because the spotlight is on the Louisville Police Department. And had it been just another story, it would have been brushed under the table. But here's the thing. We cannot let that rest. I'm not saying go out there and do wrong. Don't do anything violent. Except for peaceful demonstrations. We must continue to have that. We cannot let them get away with this. And how can you justify? Again, let's go back to the 2 officers. Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, Detective Miles Cosgrove, were quote unquote justified in using their force. No, don't take the law. First of all, we understand our history. The law was never meant for us. The law was meant for white folk. And it was never meant for us because we were cattle, we were property. So it was never meant for us. And that's historically contented. So if you think about the breakdown of how you have certain white cops who use their badge, who use being blue to make you black and blue, go upside you, the nightstick, or kill you. There's a documentary that came out years ago called Burn, Mother Effer Burn. And it deals with the riots there in Watts, California. Chief Yorty, who was the chief for over 25 years there in LA, purposely recruited suburban white officers to come to LA to beat the hell out of colored people or to kill them. That is documented on record. So that mentality has been indoctrinated into certain, if not all, police departments. If you go back to what Malcolm X said, they traded in the sheets for guns. They traded in the sheets for nightsticks and dogs. You take the same mentality and just remix it. And so that's what we're looking at here. We have to find justice. We have to become more pro our own than any time in our history, I believe.
Well, I've been saying on this show for quite a while. Actually, I said this many years on the radio. It is time for us to come together. It is time for us as a race of people to galvanize, come together. It's not about looting, stealing, taking from the rich and all that. See, right now, y'all walking around with all that damn Gucci and Prada and stuff on. And guess what? Your own neighborhoods still have nothing in them. Most of the stores where I live at still have not been brought back to full openings, and they still boarded up. Got you going through some boarded up door to get into a store, no windows. Something was to happen in there with nobody even know that everybody got shot in the store or whatever the case may be. So we've got to do what's right and stand up. We've got to protest. We've got to ask to be heard. This is an election year. I cannot remind people enough to express your right to vote. Get registered and express your right to vote. Because see, I'm even mad at the what's the guy, the state's attorney there, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron, that coon, right. That coon, what you got to be kidding me. And talking about don't let sensationalism and celebrities and all that. Man, this woman, Breonna Taylor, was murdered in her own home. And that $12 million is nothing to replace that young lady's life. So I don't get this. And then these cops get to walk free. We got to think about this now. Let's look at the Jussie Smollett case. Now, you remember when Jussie Smollett, the fake crime, Jussie Smollett's bail was at $100,000, still talked about to this very day. This man or this cop is being able to walk away on bail and not even being charged for this girl's murder. It is just ridiculous, just ridiculous.
Right, because the fix is already in. The fix has already been in. So when you look at the amendments and laws, if you look at the cases over the years, when a certain cop, say, shoots and kills a black man, let's save a black man for example, there's been a lot of them, unfortunately, kill her, and what do they say? Or him or her, I fear for my life. That's their go-to line. Right. And then they're pretty much lawyered up. They taken off the beat, they get a paid or suspend without pay internal investigation, and then the case fades away. And that's usually how it goes because they're protected. They are protected from murdering black folk, and people are not going to take it anymore. I'm not one for vigilantism, but be surprised when it happens. Don't be surprised when it happens because it's happening now.
Yep.
You've seen the case of the state troopers in California, for example. I'm not condoning violence, but you have to understand where the violence comes from. You got to understand that.
Well, all I know is the chickens are coming home to roost. That's all. You know what I'm saying? This is just beyond. And keep in mind that Cameron is a Republican and he is a Donald Trump supporter. He would be the first black man under the GOP to win a statewide office like that. And 34 years old, just really ought to be ashamed of your damn self. You really should. Mayor Lightfoot is asking for people to come out on their porches or come outside. It was at 7 o'clock for a moment of respect and peace in honor of Breonna Taylor. I'm begging and pleading with the city of Chicago. Y'all don't tear up nothing else in this damn city. We don't need to have nothing else torn up, but we need to shut some things down and get some respect and dignity out of this situation. And that should be in every major city across the country, because this is just ludicrous to say the least, you know?
It is. It really is.
Well, we also want to mention the fact that a football legend passed away today. I was shocked to hear the news about football great Mr. Gale Sayers dying. He passed away today at the age of 77. And Chris, Gale Sayers was the youngest person inducted into the Hall of Fame. His career was actually short, but he was truly a powerhouse. And so, what do you want to say about the passing of the legendary Mr. Gale Sayers?
I must say, in real time, when I was a kid, the first time I ever heard of Gale Sayers was the made-for-TV movie Brian Song.
Yes.
With Bill D. Williams playing Gale Sayers, of course, Brian Piccolo played by James Caan. And I remember as a kid watching it in real time, and then I found out who he was after that. I never saw him play. I just saw the footage, like everybody else, the videotape footage and now the digital footage of him way ahead of his time in that position. He literally changed the running back game. I was watching documentaries about certain football players that got around the Gale Sayers. One defensive player said, he was so fast, when he came towards him with the ball, it looked like Gale Sayers split half in two and ran right past him and was just that lightning quick. Unfortunately, like I said before, with the knee injuries, he could have a longer career. It was very short, but the short amount of time that he did with the Bears was just lights out fantastic. And when you look at someone who is literally a game changer, and I remember people talking about how great he was a player, how great he was off the field. I never, and you and I both were in the same show when it comes to media, never heard a bad thing about Gale Sayers.
No. And even after his career in football, he was quite the humanitarian, quite the philanthropist. His foundation, he always was such a kind and generous guy. When you said Gale Sayers, you knew that you were dealing with a class act. But some athletes, they've gotten the fame, the autonomy, all that great stuff, and they a-holes. Gale Sayers was always such a kind and generous man, and he was diagnosed with dementia in 2012, and his wife announced it in 2017 that that's what he had been battling and going through. And being somebody with knee problems, I know how that knee problem can really cripple and hurt you and just have you not feeling your best, especially when you're a top-notch athlete like that. And then for him to eventually leave out of here with dementia is just horrible. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Sayers family, and thank you, sir, for being just such a proven leader, such a giant in the industry, and a former Chicago Bears. They had Mike Ditka giving commentary about him today, and I was like, okay, whatever,
okay, take a pass on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. We Chris, as we always do every night on this show, we are all about health and safety. We want to remind everyone to please make sure you wear your mask. I know you guys are getting to the point now of Lord have mercy with these masks, but just do like I do. Make it fun, make it fashionable. Always match my mask to my outfit. Really easy and simple. But please wear your mask. We're trying to slow down the spread of the COVID-19. Everywhere you go, if you need masks now, they're readily available. If you need some, let me know. I can try to help you out. But everywhere you go, there are masks. They're fashionable masks, beaded masks, you name it. But make sure you guys wear your mask. Another thing that we always say on this show is please make sure you sanitize, keep yourself clean. Soap and water is really what's recommended. Wash your hands really good, clean under your nails, all that good stuff. But if you don't have soap and water readily available, do like I do. I'm a junkie to hand sanitizer now. It's not the best thing for my manicure because it's been tearing up my cuticles, but I guarantee you I'm trying to stay COVID free. Social distance, as Chris said earlier, he had a lady attack him because he wasn't 6 feet away from her, and I get that. As our co-host from last night, Kay Renee, we just love her. She says, remember, mask it or casket. I love when she
very
said
nice.
that. Very
like
nice.
That, yeah.
Very nice. So make sure you social distance, and then always remember what we say on this show. If you're not feeling well, keep your ass at home. It's that easy, that simple. Keep your ass at home, man. Don't nobody need you to come and be handing out Rona. Don't nobody want that. So if you don't feel good right now, we in a time where you can call your job and tell them you're not feeling good. And I bet you they'll tell your ass to stay at home, and they may not even dock you for sick days. They ain't gonna dock you for sick days. Because right now, everybody, so if you don't feel well, do us all a favor. Stay your ass at home. That's the public service announcement, right?
Hey, I concur with you wholeheartedly. Look, stay your ass at home. It's
stay your ass at home.
Exactly. It's great.
Right, right. Matter of fact, we pushing to stay at home forever now. Work from home. Look at how amazing this is. Look at how great
this is. It's funny about how art imitates life and vice versa when it comes to the mask situation. There was a program came on HBO last year called The Watchmen. Mm-hmm. In fact, Regina King won an Emmy for her role in that. And The Watchmen was a very great program. It dealt with dealing with Black history, putting into the DC comic timeline of The Watchmen. And in this series last year, there were masked heroes, and the cops and the officers all wore masks. And none of the scene in real life, it was really kind of freaky when the whole mask came about through COVID and everything else. But like art imitate life and vice versa, to see come to fruition, actual officers in the street wearing masks, just like the ones in Watchmen.
Well, my many years of being a flight attendant, and any trips to Tokyo or any trips to China, any place like that, they've always been wearing masks. And we would always just look and kind of say, oh, what do they have masks on for? And then keep in mind, Michael Jackson always wore a mask, and people was like, what's that all about? Made fun of him. And now here we are wearing the mask. I mean, they are hot and cumbersome at times, but if this is to help slow the spread or to eradicate the spread of COVID-19, I'm all for it. And as I told you guys, I'm trying to stay fashionable. I match them with every outfit, and do what's necessary. But I want to end to this. I want us to eventually get back to a new normal. And, we all know it won't be what it needs to be. But at least we hope we do get back to a new normal anytime. So, Bass, anything you got in news and entertainment tonight you want to talk real quick before we bring our next guest in? Our legendary guest, by the way.
Big time. Looking forward to the guest, man. But before we bring the guest on, who is also legendary, there's a TV show that's on now on Netflix called Ratched. And I know a lot of people, go when they hear Ratched, they talk about, the street jargon of it. But this pretty much, Ratched deals with the following. It deals with the backstory. If you ever saw the movie, was it One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson, the nurse was in there, Nurse Mildred Ratched. It deals with her backstory, played by Sarah Paulson. It is great. I've been on 3 episodes already. I mean, the scenery is lovely. It deals like the 1940s on the West Coast. You would enjoy it. So for those of you out there looking for something to watch and check out, Ratched on Netflix, I highly recommend it.
Okay. All right. I have to add that to my list. It's so funny because, I went kicking and screaming to watch P-Valley. It was a long time. And then when I finally did watch P-Valley, I loved it so much that, of course, we dedicated the entire show one evening to P-Valley. So I will have to check it out. And then you and I'll have to cover it once more people have seen it and talked about it.
Absolutely.
All right. So we want to remind everyone to please keep saying Breonna Taylor's name. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. We also want to say God bless the life and times of Mr. Gail Sayers. Thank you, Marguerite. We appreciate you for that reminder. All right. For those of you all that are just joining us, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the Real Chat Daddy Show. I am your host, Chat Daddy. In the box next to me is my brother, the one and only Mr. Chris Bass, better known as Boom Shakalaka. Chris has been in the radio business for many years, and I just appreciate whenever he's here. Tonight, our show is talking about Black Chicago, the past, the present, and the future. And in just a few moments, I'll introduce you to quite the griot of Black Chicago history, as well as just Black history as a whole. He's an international filmmaker, producer, just all around just wonderful gentleman, and we're honored to have him him here with us this evening. Later on in the show, earlier on Facebook, I posted what are some of your fondest memories of Chicago. A lot of you guys gave so many fond memories, and tonight you'll be able to put them in the timeline. I'll read them on the air. Bass and I are true Chicagoans. We'll be able to talk about everything that is Chicago. But first, we got to get our history lesson, right, Bass?
That's absolutely. Bring on the history. We need it.
I know. We need it. We need it. Look, I'm just going to sit back and get all the history we can. Do me a favor, you guys. Go over to YouTube. Subscribe to The Real Chat Daddy Show on YouTube. It's free. It does not cost you anything. I promise I won't come knocking on your door on Saturday mornings asking, have you supported The Real Chat Daddy? You know, I won't do that. I'm not like, you know, people that like to knock on doors and ask that question. I will not bill your credit card for anything that, you know, it's free for you to subscribe to this free show. This is a free show I do every night, as well as if you go over to Facebook to The Real Chat Daddy Show on Facebook and like that page, it would help me out a great deal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest, I am honored to have him here. As I said, he's an international film producer and director. He's the former director of educational and public programs for the DuSable Museum of African American History. He's a former Joseph Jefferson Awards Committee member, Illinois Humanities Council Rhodes Scholar. He all look, Chris, how we say it. He all that in a bag of chips, and we talking about the good chips, not the bad chips. He like a
he is a good crunchy chip.
Yeah, he like a good kettle chip, like a really
right.
like them good. Like if you go to a really fancy deli,
yes,
and get a good and they give you them good bag of chips, that would be Pomone. That would be him. Absolutely. Now let's see if he
absolutely
yeah, too. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the icon, the legend, Mr. Pomone Rami. Yay! How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. You know, this has to be in all of my career the first time that I have been associated with the chip.
Right. And here's the crazy piece. What flavor chip would you be, Pomone? You'd have to be just some exotic good flavor.
Oh gosh, Nigerian Mountain.
Oh! Sound like I might want to smoke some of that too. I don't know.
It's also good to see you, Chris. It's a pleasure being with both of you gentlemen.
Thank you.
Oh, look. Thank you. No, like Art say, no, you're a legend, sir. We passed, our way a couple of times. I've always admired your work. It's good to be with you on this platform. Thank you for everything you have done and continue to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
When I talked to you a couple of weeks ago, I said, I want to do this whole series on Black Chicago. I want to continue this, but I wanted you to get us started, kind of go back to the Great Migration, kind of talk about some of your earlier experiences, what you remember. And then down the road, I'm going to invite people on the show who have fond memories of particular neighborhoods. But I want you to set up the Black Chicago experience from as far back as you'd like to go, and we're here to just absorb everything you're going to share with us tonight. We really appreciate you being here.
All right, wonderful. Well, first of all, my mother and father came up during the Great Migration. My father was from Oklahoma. My grandmother and my mother were from Mississippi. My grandfather was a Pullman porter, and that's how they ended up in Chicago. And so what a lot of people may not know is that the Great Migration came about as the result of the struggles that we were going through in the South, but also the opportunities that were beginning to develop in Chicago. Chicago's always been a unique space. It's been a unique space for us. Now, let me just say, too, that growing up in Chicago for me was absolutely wonderful initially. But I want to draw two references that a lot of people might not know about. Okay, the first is most people know about the Chicago fire with the cow kicking over the bucket and Chicago catching on fire. So that was the first Chicago fire. 2 years later, there was a second Chicago fire that most people don't know about, and it burned up the Black community in Chicago, which was from Archer Avenue to 26th Street, from Clark to Federal. And so we were in that area along with other ethnic groups, brothels, the whorehouses were there. And so when that burned up, it was the beginning of the development of Bronzeville. And so it came out of that. Okay, so this is the other point that and I really want your listeners to go back and look at this at some point. There was a rats. Okay, before the projects were built, as most people know, the projects were built from 22nd Street to almost 53rd on State Street. Dearborn Homes, Stateway Gardens, Robert Taylor, going down that stretch. So there was a study done by a gentleman in Germany named Calhoun. It was called the Rat Study. And you can look it up on Google whenever you get a chance. They did a study about rats being put in a wonderful utopian environment that had no room for growth. It was beautiful, though. They had these areas. It was like the project buildings. They could travel around. They had the ultimate in food and so forth. As they began to populate, however, everything began to change. They began to kill their children. They began to demonstrate signs of homosexuality. They began to eat each other. All of these things were demonstrated in that study, and they built the projects anyway. And if you look at the manifestation of what happened in the housing projects, you can almost see the same types of behavior as overcrowding became an issue. And so I just kind of I couldn't not mention those couple of things, because that's sort of the basis for where we are in Chicago. Now that has been said, one of the things that, you mentioned earlier, like what were your fondest memories of Chicago? So I want to give a couple to sort of set the standard for this. Playing in fire hydrants for me was just incredible. Just to be able to go outside, turn the water on until the police came and turned them off. But to play in those fire hydrants was a Chicago thing. And a lot of us really enjoyed doing that. Playing baseball. Baseball became an issue because of the number of people that it took to play it. And it had to be organized. You needed at least 18 people to play a game. And so basketball became a priority because it was much easier. And it took less time to organize. Prior to that, you had all of these men that were outside, that were teaching people how to play baseball, that were working out in the projects with us and so forth. The next thing was picnics in the park. But it was during a period of time where when you went to the park, they had picnic tables and they also had built-in barbecue pits. So you had your own, you could just go out there and just kind of hang out and have a good time. And all of that stuff was taken away. On the beach in 1967, Marlon and Phil Coran started playing on the beach with the Artistic Heritage Ensemble, which ultimately became Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they would be out there every weekend. And so we had to hear them, and the Darlene Blackburn dancers, the Spencer Jackson family. The Spencer Jacksons were the original Jacksons before the Jackson 5. The Spencer Jackson family was one of the top gospel groups. And so our experiences growing up, because of segregation, was much more wholesome, because we had nightclubs, we had bowling alleys, we had places where you could go roller skating. Everything that we needed, everything that we wanted to do was wrapped within our own communities. And it wasn't until, we began to move out, when the professionals began to be accepted, that we lost a lot of those businesses and those exciting opportunities. The Pride Districts. Originally, the Pride Districts in Stateway Gardens, for example, we had a drama club, which is how I ended up getting into theater. There were all kind of sports. There was all kind of athletic programs. There was dance programs. It was everything that you could want to do in those communities. We heard Martin Luther King. He came down to speak at Stateway Gardens. The symphony orchestra used to play there on the weekends. And then it becomes the projects. And part of the reason that it became the projects is because the Chicago Pride District changed the rules and said that men could no longer live there. And that's in essence what happened. They broke up the families because they told women that if you're going to stay here, you can't have a man. And then we send somebody in to check, and the women became the people that were the renters, and they put all of the families out. And so that changed a lot of that. But I think that from the time that Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable founded Chicago to the time that we began to repopulate it, where people began to come up from the South, we had an exciting and an incredible community. So one other example, between 35th Street and 47th, between Federal and the Lake, let me just sort of draw a parallel there. Black History Month, Carter G. Woodson and his organization met at the YMCA, which was on 38th and Wabash. That's where they began to develop the ideas and notions of that. On Federal and 37th was the first Black hospital. Providence was there first. The first Black nursing home, the first Black museum, the DuSable, the first Black art center, the Southside Community Art Center. It's the oldest in the entire country. They're celebrating 80 years this year. They were there. The Southside Center for the Performing Arts, the Afro Arts Theater. You can go on and on and on about the intellectual and cultural opportunities that we had just in that sheer community itself. And it was in our ability to be able to discuss our issues, to find a way to magnify our glory by looking at the work that other people were doing was exceptional. So I did a Zoom session a couple of nights ago with a gentleman named Mark Larson that wrote a book called The Ensemble that deals with theater and its development in Chicago. And so he starts, and it's an incredible book. A number of people interviewed in it. But he starts the book in 1953 at the University of Chicago. And he basically says that was the beginning of the Chicago Black theater movement. And in a number of ways, they were the original source for development of Second City and a number of those activities. So I gave him that. However, how do you reconcile the fact that in the 1930s, Langston Hughes founded the Skyloft Players? Between 1933 and 1940, there were 5 Black theater companies in Chicago. So if there was really a movement that was developed, we developed it. They benefited from it. But Margaret Burroughs had a theater company. Oscar Brown Jr. had a theater company. Ted Ward and Richard Wright had a theater company here. Mickey Grant had a theater company here. We can go on and on down the line. And so what we have not done, I think, is had a great marketing person for Chicago or for the Black community in Chicago, which is why we have been denoted as the second city. But the reality is, when I first went to New York, most of the people running the institutions that were from Chicago. When I went to LA, most of the people that were running the stuff out there were from Chicago, but the Harlem Globetrotters was the starting 5 at Wendell Phillips High School. And when they took that basketball team from 39th Street, Abe Saperstein said, well, nobody will know they're Black if I call it the Chicago Globetrotters. So I'm going to call it the Harlem Globetrotters instead. But they were all Chicago folks. So what we have been able to do here, the magic that we were able to create, has had an impact on the entire world. And let me just say something as a side note to the two of you. Our ability to grow as a people, our ability to stretch the bounds of our limitations starts with media. It starts with having a voice. And for you all to have the shows that you've got, to give people an opportunity to talk, because we need to talk. We need to talk it out. We need to not only to find solutions, but also just to decrud, just to get the garbage out of our heads. And I'm sure that both of you get crazy, what you would consider crazy callers that are calling. But it's people that are struggling with, how do I survive today? And I heard your comments earlier about the woman who thought that you were stalking her. This is such a strange time. People are hurting. People are lost. And this is the first time in our lives And I think I can safely say this, that you can't see next week. You don't know what next week is going to look like. And when you're confronted with that, and you're confronted with a lack of money and a lack of resources and the number of lies that are being told across the board, what else do? You strike out. You strike out at everything and everybody that surrounds you. And I think that woman was just responding to the craziness of her life and where she found herself at this morning. You mentioned earlier that I did a film in Nigeria called 93 Days, which deals with the Ebola crisis and what happened in Nigeria. Now, in Nigeria, when the Ebola crisis hit, only 8 people died and 20 people got infected. And why is that in a city, Lagos, of 21 million people? It's really simple. They found one voice. They got together, all of the health professionals, the government agencies, the state agencies, they got together, they discussed the plan, they went out to the people and said, this is what you have to do. Unlike here, where we're told, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Black kids can't get sick, black kids can get sick. White people not getting sick, black people, don't worry about it. We have been told so much stuff that you don't know what to believe. And so as a result, you suffer even more. We've lost, people keep saying, well, more people died from the flu. I don't know anybody in my lifetime that's ever died from the flu.
Me neither.
I know a number of people that have died from the coronavirus. I don't know anybody that's died from the flu. And I don't know. And every time I've said this in a public forum, nobody else has ever known anybody that's died from the flu. So it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing for it to be a functional reality. And so Chicago, going all the way through to the 60s and the influences that we had on the Black Power movement and the cultural movement to today, the thing that I'm most amazed by and pleased with are the number of strong young voices that are still coming on, that are still out there, that are still standing up. There's a poem by Sterling A. Brown that says, strong men keep it coming on, getting stronger. And same thing with women. And so when we look at these young people and we look at the fact that what they need more than anything is to be allowed to find their voice, to be guided, by those of us based on our experiences, but to find their own unique voice, and then to be as fearless as young people are. Because a lot of us, we have jobs, we have mortgages, we have stuff that we got to pay for. So we don't have the brokenness that allows some of us to protest as much as young people, because they can get out there and they can really make a difference. And what we need to do, if as much as we can, is help them to continue to push forward. We have been in war since the 1400s. And ain't nobody told us. We've never recognized it. And so we keep expecting for something to change in a people that we have no control over changing. The whole issue of racism, discrimination is not our problem. We didn't create it. We can't change it. It is within the white community that they have to stand up. And what we've seen in the protests now are more young whites, more young Latinx. We've seen more cultural people out there. And that's because they're hurting. I think that the whole George Floyd piece was the result of people being locked in with the coronavirus. Because we were locked in, we had to look at TV and you had to see it over and over and over again. And so the angst of that, coupled with the fact that you don't have the money, you don't have the job, you're trying to figure out how you go do rent next month, has driven a number of people into the street where they normally would be fighting against us. They have now found that they have reasons to fight for themselves.
Interesting. Now, I do want to go back. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm with you. I got you.
Okay, good. I want to go back just a little bit if I could. Okay. I always know we've had crime in our particular neighborhoods, but what you described was just such a beautiful time, a moment of kumbaya. Everybody seemed to be getting along, building as Black people. when did our communities become so violent, so negative? Now all we hear is carjacking, shootings, things like that. So when did it kind of turn, and what do you think was the reason things turned so downward in our communities?
I think you have to look at it sort of in sections. The first would be the 60s. In the 60s, there was an attack on Black manhood and leadership. And so when you remove leadership, and I'm talking the elimination of Malcolm, the elimination of Fred Hampton, the elimination of Jeff Fort, the elimination of Barksdale, you can, from the gangs to the political, we lost leadership. And without someone that you will respect enough, and even in sports, you know, I remember when Antoine Walker, I remember when he got robbed. And I remember thinking that the reason that a lot of our athletes weren't robbed and taken advantage of early is because they had a connection to the community. They lived with us. You know, they gave to the community. They were around. And so I think the first part was the 60s and the elimination of leadership. Because when I was growing up, there was a lady, and I never will forget her. There was a lady named Miss Wright that lived on the first floor in 3651 South Federal in Stateway Gardens. You couldn't do nothing without Miss Wright seeing it and telling your parents. You know, she was the watchdog for the community, but we respected her. You know, whenever we saw Miss Wright, we knew she was going to tell our mother and father, you would straighten up. So I think part of it was the disrespect that came about as a result of this movement related to drugs, the manifestation of drugs in our community in the 70s. I think that began to continue to wipe us out. And thirdly, and I think this is something that enough of us don't deal with. Let me just go back for a minute. Our granddaughter was killed about 5 years ago. She was 10.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
And she was murdered, basically, in Las Vegas. And when the woman who murdered, I'm not going to go into the details of the case, but the woman who murdered her basically said that she didn't have a medication and she went crazy, to make a long story short. I'm saying that because our children were given Ritalin. They were given all of these drugs to control their behavior as children. And then when they became 18, they were cut off. And so now you have all of these drug-dependent young people based on opiates in the Black community that are now out there crazed because they no longer are being controlled by this medication that they got for free until they were old enough, and then they couldn't afford it. So that's a part of it. The crack babies, we've never dealt with the issue of crack babies. Talked about it for a while during the crack epidemic, but it was never really addressed. And then finally, there is a thing in African society that says for you to be well, your mind, your body, and your spirit have to be well in tandem. They have to be working together. And so we lost all of it. You know, we lost the spiritual connection. We stopped being able to support the church. And the reason that a lot of people stopped supporting the church is because the church didn't support the movement. They didn't stand up behind, you know, when Martin Luther King was in Chicago, most of the churches turned their back on him. They weren't involved. You know, a lot of the ministers now are not involved unless they can get some new members out of it. You don't see them out on the front line without the necessity of having a news crew behind them, just shoring people up. So I think that was a major factor. And then finally, there was a statement that was made by the FBI in 1963 that they would never create another Black Messiah. And the way that you do that is that you eliminate the possibility of developing leadership by cutting them out of the media. You don't show them. And so when you talk to young people now and you say to them, so who's your voice and where do you get information? Most of them have the incapacity of being able to answer that because the folks that should be our leaders are not given the opportunity to be on television. So what we're pushed to receive as our leaders are people that are entertainers or sports folks. So instead of talking to an intellectual, you talk to a person that's a rapper just because they have some fans or some likes. And so I think it's a combination of all of that. And so the challenge is, and as media people, the challenge has to be, how do we create our own stars? How do we take that back and stop letting the broader community say, this is who you should follow, this is who represents you, because most of the time they don't anyway. So I had a conversation with some theaters, primarily Caucasian theaters, a couple of days ago, and I said to them, when you're gonna talk about Shakespeare, who said Shakespeare was classic? I spent time at the Royal Shakespearean Festival and Theater in London. I still don't get it. I understand it, but I also know that there are so many Black folks that have written incredible stuff that are ignored, that we have to create our own stars. We have to prop people up and say, this is who we should be supporting. This is who we should believe in. We lost our belief systems. Finally, for us to move forward, young people have to have a value for life. So your life has to be more valuable than your gym shoes. If somebody steps on your shoe, you can't be killing nobody because of that, because life is of value. You appreciate life for two reasons. One, because you have a reflection on where you came from. And two, you have an idea of a positive future. Unless we re-infuse that in young people so that they know that there is a hope, there is a dream for the future, until we do that, they're going to continue to sacrifice themselves.
Wow. This has been so powerful. Bass, I know you have a couple of questions for our guests. And I even have a few more questions as well, too. But Bass, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk to our guests and question, because he really has laid it all out. But I know your mind is racing over there. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, my mind's like Speed Racer right now, man. I'm beating Racer X in my mind right now. So to concur what you said, Mr. Ramey, when you talk about the disconnect I was coming up in the 70s and 80s, and I was born in 1967. And so it was that end going into a new era where I noticed a lot of brothers and sisters at that time had a spiritual connection to the motherland with the dashikis and the afros and everything else. It was a great time to come up. It was a sense of family. Since the family got disconnected, we also got disconnected, if you think about that as well. So because there wasn't, like you said before, a mother figure that would, be the watchdog for the neighborhood and that would tell on you got, acting up and things like that. The family became altogether bent out of shape. There was no family. It was redirected, a complete 180 to how you, I, or anybody else grew up in the era where we were blessed to have a two-parent or a parent that loved us conditionally. And that love has now been severed. So when you go back and think about how it was coming up, and like Art said, it was a great time. It was a beautiful time to come up because you had a sense of love. You knew somebody loved you. And as a child coming up, you need that. You need to be nurtured. You need to have that, to have to go forward in your own life, to be embraced. And also the fact that I don't hear that word anymore too much. I don't hear the word love. I hear about hate. I hear about, like I said before, stepping on somebody's gym shoes because they got bent out of shape, and go take somebody's life out, take out a gun out, and shoot and kill somebody over a pair of gym shoes. You're absolutely correct. We have replayed the book. The book should not have been written that way, but unfortunately, it's what they have now. Go back to what we said about younger generation. I think millennials, when they are, of course, sense of action, they know who to embrace, who not to embrace. We just lost Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a fantastic voice. She became more popular in her time, calling her what? Notorious, RBG. They've embraced her. So when you had the connection again between an older generation and the younger generation, any movement is galvanized through the youth. Look at historical, whether it's South Africa, whether it's here in America, civil rights, whatever, it's always galvanized by the youth. We cannot get rid of youth because that is our future, literally. So how do we, again, try to find a way to connect to millennials?
Well,
and
the
not
first thing that I would
disconnect?
say is that, we have had a disconnected family ever since slavery. So it's not something that is new, but the difference was
Right.
that we understood the importance of the people. And so when you were in slavery, you were trying to help somebody to be free. And it didn't have to necessarily be your brother or your sister. It could have been anybody, but you were about freedom. And what is most interesting about that is, do you know how difficult it is for people to keep secrets? So just imagine being on a plantation and people kept secrets. They didn't tell, because if they had told, then people never would have escaped. And so that's one thing. But more importantly, I think we have to stop allowing other people to define our realities. The example of that is during the 60s, and I was proud to be there, and with the beautiful women, the beautiful hair, the whole bit. We were convinced, however, that it was a fad and that it was something that we should grow out of. We were convinced that Black power was something that was temporary rather than a necessity. So I have been referred to at times as the Black Power man. Like that's something wrong with that. And so my response to it always is, well, if you can't see us having Black power, you're one of these people that would have believed we never got out of slavery, right? Because you've been still pushing that same general philosophy. The other part of it is white people, and I'm going to say this generally, that control media have the tendency to create terms for us that delegitimize where we are. For example, playing the race card. When did race become a card game? But we allowed it. And not only did we allow it, but we have the tendency to use that term ourselves. And we should always be able to stand up for who we are. But our tendency, and I say this too often, and I hope at some point I will be able to stop saying it, but we have the tendency to want to be accepted more than we want to be successful. And that in and of itself is a crime. Because would you rather have a business on 47th Street where you have 20,000 people coming every week, or a business on the north side where you have 5,000 people coming every week? And a lot of us want to go north because we have been inundated with this notion that there is no value in what we are, what we do, unless we pull it together ourselves. And so when we talk about the millennials have to do two things. Number one, I was told by a millennial at one point that we didn't leave a roadmap. Said, well, you old people didn't leave a roadmap for us. And my response to them was, we left you books, which we didn't have. When we were growing up in the 60s, all of these Black books weren't published. They didn't start coming out until after Malcolm died, which is when the Black Power movement really started, and Black cultural movement. So all of these books that are now available, you have everything in front of you to be able to make an informed decision. But there are two different things that we do. Number one, we don't tell our children enough that they need to stay connected. When we send them to colleges, they are left out on their own with no capacity to find who they are. They're not told enough that when you finish the school, you got to come back. In Nigeria, for example, when you graduate from college and your tuition is paid, you have to serve the country. You have to serve your community for a certain amount of time before you can go out and just make your money. And so the millennials have to realize that you have to still see, even if you don't want it to be, that it's real. So this young man told me, I've never been faced with racism. And I said, okay, so have you ever been in the store and somebody followed you around because you were Black? He said, well, yeah, that's happened. Have you ever been turned down for this? Well, yeah, that's happened. That's what racism is. You can call it by some other term if you like, but we have to make a commitment to the reintroduction and the uplifting of our children. And so what is the purpose of education? In the case of Black people, it has to be we are being educated to improve the quality of our lives. And I heard something that you said earlier, Chad, about our communities. And I gave a lecture not too long ago, and I said, in the history of this country, Black people have never burned up their community. And the white people looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, we haven't. Never. Name me one time that Black people have burned up their community. Did we burn Chatham? Did we burn Ladera Heights in California? Those were our communities where we owned. Every place that we burn is because we rent it, because it's not ours. It's where we're kept, but they're not really our communities. We've never burned our communities down. Ain't no Black folks went out and burnt their own houses or their own businesses, unless, well, there was sometimes when the wind shifted, because, we and then some got burned up. But in general, we've never burned up our communities. So the question should be different. The question should be, how do you sustain a place until you own it, until it becomes yours? And we have to own these communities. There was a period of time where a Black family would move in and all the white people would leave the community. That happened. That's how we got Chatham. That's how we got a lot of Auburn, Gresham. That's how we got a lot of these communities. What we should have done was said, okay, all we got to do is identify these communities, send one Black family in, then we can take that one too. We'd have had the whole South Side just by them wanting to be part of the flight away from the city. So I think the challenge for any of us is the first question that all of us should have in our mind is, how does it free us? The second question should be, how are the children doing and how do we save them? Because it's in the reflection of the children that will determine how we move forward. And the third part of it is, how do we redefine what manhood and womanhood represents as it relates to Black people and relationships? And I know, Chad, that you deal with relationships a lot. And in this day and time, we really do have to spend more time in defining, if I'm going to marry you, what does that mean? In the long run, what does it mean? What does it mean that we are committed? Like, what does the term committed mean? Because I think too many times people don't even talk. They don't, and we're not using the same definitions. So as we form relationships, they're off-centered because we never talk about those things that are key. Where do we want to raise our children? What kind of people are we going to be? What is our political philosophy? Can I stay with you if you're voting for Trump and I'm voting for Biden? Is that the straw that breaks the camel's back? So, but it is in our ability to have these kind of conversations that you have day in, day out, that will help, I think, people to find the proper voices. And we have to really deal with serious questions. It all shouldn't be about comedy, and comedy is important. One thing about entertainment, when your life is screwed up, you don't want to see drama. So the reason that a lot of us, buy so many, into so many comedies is because our lives are so screwed up that we just need to laugh. So in looking at that reality, you have to say, okay, so what are the things that we should do as creative people to improve the quality of the lives of the folks that we have set out here to create for? I hope that answered the question.
That did it, for me.
Incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And just to dovetail on that real quick, Mr. Ramey, I think we all should start having a Malcolm X dictionary moment. We've read the book, we've seen the movie, when he's reading the dictionary about the words, Black means soul and everything else. He has an aha moment. He said, wait a minute, this book is written by white folk. We should all have a lot of moments like that, knowing your history. Case in point, everything we've done as Black folk walking the earth in this part of the country with so-called United States of America has always been rewritten. It's always been the white folks' story about who we are when it comes to us in this country, when it comes to indigenous Native American people. Case in point, if you're old school like me, back in the day from radio, not that old, but from radio or television, you had the Lone Ranger. So you had the Lone Ranger. Come to find out, that was based off of a black man named Bass Reeves. He was the first U.S. black African American ranger in the late 1800s. He traveled sometime with Native American companions, quote unquote. He would use disguises, and he was alone. So think about it. You know, you're black, you're alone, you're a lone ranger. Take the A off, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how they do all that.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's history is extremely important. And for whatever your field is going to be, whether you are going into hair care, I mean, how do you say that you want to be a hair care person and not know who C.J. Walker is, or at least look at the model created, so that at some point down the line you can say, well, this is how she dealt with black people and how she became the first millionaire. Right. So if you're going to look at television, or if you're going to look at creating any kind of institutions, the other thing about the 60s that we had that you all don't have, or millennials don't have the benefit of, is that we had institutions that we could go and have these levels of discourse. So you had the Topographical Research Center, you had the Communiversity. There were 27 black institutions on the South Side alone, where you could go and you could talk about us and what we needed to do and how we needed to stand up. And in general points, you have to have a place in which you can generate the kind of ideas and discussions that help people to see. We decided when we came back to Chicago, my wife and I, that we would focus on 14 to 19-year-olds as our give back. And what we said to ourselves in doing it was, we want to give them the opportunity to find a voice. But secondly, we wanted to let them know that you have a choice of what you see when you look out of the window. Because when you look out of the window, you can either see grass growing and trees blossoming, or you can see all the bottles that are broken. They're both there. But what you see is how you develop your life force. You can either see the crackhead in the corner, or you can see the father with his daughter that's walking down the street holding our hand. So we have to change our perception of ourselves and how we see ourselves, and then use our voice to improve the quality of the lives that we have in front of us. You know, someone asked me how I make decisions about the work that I do, and I said that I use the time capsule philosophy, that in 200 years, my great-great-grandchildren are going to look at this time capsule. They're going to open it up, and they're going to find my stuff in it. Do I still write that poem? Do I do that movie? Do I play that part? Do I sing that song? Because it's going to be around a long time after I'm gone. But the memory of that will be inherent in my children and what they perceive and what they become. So we need to be very cautious about what we produce, and also find new ways in which to tell different types of stories. You know, I see a lot of, I just finished judging the new films for the Black Harvest Film Festival. And what you see when you're looking at these movies is that everybody really is writing because they want to have a TV show. So a lot of the movies, they don't finish. You know, they look like they're going to be a sequel, even though they might not ever have one. And so instead of writing with a newness, they're writing with what's on now, and not realizing that by the time you finish your project, they've already done that. You know, you can't be living in what's happening just today. In some ways, you have to be futuristic. Finally. And I want to use Black Panther as an example. We have to be able to look at a future that is separate from our white realities. What do I mean by that? When we look at Black Panther, and I know everybody loves Black Panther. I love the movie too. But if you had the opportunity to go or to live in Wakanda, where would you rather live? In the mountains? I mean, up in the sky with the hierarchy, or on the streets with the people? because that movie was structured within the philosophy of capitalism and the current conditions of our society. And so you got spaceships, and you mean I got to herd some cattle? What's up with that? I want to be able to sky with everybody else. So we have to be able to look at a future that is based around our collectively doing well and not individually just being millionaires. And it has to be part of how we begin to construct our visions for the future.
Interesting. Oh, let me unmute myself. Oh, I am unmuted. I have an educator on, and she's asking, what books would you most recommend we start giving our Black children to read? If you had to give 3 or 4 books that you would highly recommend that every Black child should read, what would be those books?
Okay. First of all, I wouldn't put them together. I would have to make that based on the age of the children. If you work for CPS, if you're a CPS instructor, we developed the interdisciplinary African and African American curriculum for CPS as well as for the State Board of Education. There's over 250 lessons that are available for every age group, every course, from PE to science, dealing with the Black contributions. For example, Black women and their role in the development of mathematics, the oldest mathematical tool that anybody has ever found in the world was found among African women. That is the key central point to the development of mathematics. And if your children know that you created math, can they really say that they can't do it? They just kind of mean you got to let's work a little harder. So if it's still available, I would say Before the Mayflower, that was originally written by Lerone Bennett. I would say Malcolm's autobiography. You can never go wrong with that. In terms of contemporary stuff and Chicago people, Eve Ewing, anything that Third World Press has put out. Ta-Nehisi Coates' father, Paul, has a publishing company. I believe they're in Boston or Philly. You can look him up, and they have books that are available as well. We have to also support the businesses that were constructed for providing this information. One of the things that came out about maybe 4 or 5 months ago was a story about how the FBI, at the same time they were trying to destroy the Black Panther Party, they were also working to destroy Black bookstores. And why would they do that? Why are there no Black bookstores in comparison to how many there used to be? Because they set out to destroy them on purpose. And just think about it this way. During slavery, the only thing you needed to be free was a piece of paper written by a person that was uneducated, more than likely, because most of those plantation folks were uneducated, but you needed a note. That's why it was so important for us not to be able to read. Because if we could read, we would just write our own note. And then off to freedom. So Sam Greenlee, the author and of The Spook Who Sat by the Door, said that a free Black mind is a weapon of mass destruction. And it is so true. It is our ability to be able to free ourselves of everything that's been put in front of us other than how are we going to be free? How are our children going to be better off than where we are? What are we going to do to improve and to build our own communities, our own economic structures? Every time we built an economic reality for ourselves, it has been destroyed on purpose. And finally, how do we deal with this issue of protection? When I raised the issue of manhood, I'm not even talking about in terms of relationships. There was a time when we said that the man had to be the provider. Well, today is a different economic reality. However, I think that a man does have to step up and say, how do I provide for freedom? Because that is not necessarily an issue of, can I have the economic control over you in the household? But can I make a commitment that every day of my life, I'm going to commit to doing something that will improve our plight, And that's what our children should be taught every day of their lives. Yeah, you can go to school, but you got to come back home. You got to come back to the community, And that's that's another thing that used to happen during the 40s and 50s at Southside Community Arts Center. A lot of those artists would go down to the Art Institute, and they would take classes, and then they would come back to the Art Center and teach them for free, because most of the artists couldn't afford to go down there. And so it's that kind of giving that is extremely important. Mentoring is extremely important. When I went to Nigeria, I took a young filmmaker from here with me. He was there with me for 4 months, because I felt that every opportunity that I had, I've got to be able to pass some of it on to who's going to follow us. And so every film project we do, every TV project we do, we hire young people to mentor with, to study under every role, so that they can have a head start on this industry and something to put on their resumes of importance.
Pomone, you have been outstanding. You're not in any hurry to leave us right now, are you?
No, I'm at home, which is a wonderful thing.
Very good. Well, very good. I do want to shift gears just a little bit. Earlier on Facebook, I posted, "How Chicago are you?" And I want us to have some fun now. I want to talk about just how Chicago you are. And Pomone, I want you to kind of help us to understand what the nightlife was about, what clubs you went to, what were the restaurants. I live further south now, and my biggest thing is that there are no sit-down restaurants here on the South Side where I remember Army and Lou's, fine dining on 75th Street. So I want to go back, if we could, to where did you party and where did you take your fabulous wife out to eat within our own community? And what a lot of Black people don't realize, at 83rd and Cottage, the Nation of Islam had a beautiful fine dining restaurant here on 83rd and Cottage. So please help us to know how we partied, where we went, and all that great stuff.
Okay, so the first thing, and I would assume that I would speak for both of you in this. Our parents, most of the time, were excellent cooks, right? Your mother, your father, maybe. And so I was always chasing who could beat their meals. Because my father made the best sweet potato pie ever on the planet. And so I still use that as the litmus test now for sweet potato pie. However, our communities were drenched with things that we could do. So, and I'm not even gonna go back as far as the Club de Lisa, but the Savoy.
Yes.
The High Chaparral, that was on 55th Street, the Taste that was on 63rd,
the Burning Spear.
The Burning Spear. There were so many nightclubs that we could go. You could be out all night just bar hopping with no issues, no problems, other than unless you taught somebody's girlfriend and became an issue. But there was no shooting and things like that. So that was one thing. I was a little different because I used to like to go downtown, so I would do that a lot as well. I've always been adventurous, and I never felt that I had limitations. So when I was dating, I would go over everywhere. But the only restaurant that I would mention that I would never have done without would be Gladys's. Gladys's restaurant and specific, people go to Red Lobster because of the cheese biscuits. All over the world would come to eat Gladys's biscuits.
Yes,
that alone was just worth it. Being able to do, and so that the bowling alleys. I stopped bowling after a while, but just being in the bowling alley, and Roberts. I think Roberts had the one that was on Cottage, either King Drive or Cottage Grove at one point. Right next to his hotels and his motels, as he was building those. So that was one. There were a lot of other places for entertainment.
And that's what people don't realize. A Black man had major Robert's Motels. And they, you know, back in the day, the word motel did not mean cheap and sleazy. And matter of fact, the Robert's Motel at 63rd and King Drive was almost the equivalent of what you would consider one of our Hyatts or Sheratons or whatever, and people would have major events. I believe he had, you know, rooms in the hundreds there. And so, you know, motel didn't have that sleazy connotation back then.
It didn't. And you know, there was a period of time where we used to get dressed up, the guys in Dallas, I just mentioned, or the 50-yard line was another one. We used to get dressed up on the weekends and go out. And so I began to become disillusioned when performers, you know, because when we had the Supremes and the Temptations and all these folks, when they performed, they had costumes, you know, they got clean, they had suits. And then you get to a point where people just got up in the morning, you know, put on what was ever up under the bed, or they dropped on the floor and then they go perform in it. And so you have a whole era of time where people felt, you know, I'm just going to perform in whatever I'm performing in. But there's not the jitneys. I have to mention the jitneys used to run up and down prior to Uber or any of those. The jitneys ran up and down King Drive. It was a quarter, and as many people as could get in it would get in it. And it would take you from 35th Street all the way to 63rd. And then it would turn around and would go back the other direction. And you would just crowd in, you know, if they got 5 people or 6 people or whatever. But that was our mode of transportation during that period of time. And then they were shut down, forced out of business, so the taxi cabs could take that business and take that money over. And it's the same thing with everything else. It's the policy. The policy was taken from us, and they made it the lottery, and it was our economic engine. You know, marijuana. You know, it was one of the ways in which we can make money in our communities, and now it's been taken over, and we've been cut out of it completely. Hopefully, some of that will change sometime soon. But
that's when it was called reefer. That's when it was called. That's right.
That's right.
Base, what restaurants do you remember growing up here in Chicago? And what are some of the memories you had of places? Because that was really good.
Yeah, it was really good. In fact, we went to the new salon. It used to be on 79th Street. That was going towards Halsted. We went to that one. That was a good place to go. I was just thinking about in general. See, I grew up in South Shore, and my grandparents were in Chatham. So I just remember going up and down 79th Street, you know, back in the day, you know, coming from South Shore to my grandparents' house, and they stayed in on 80th and King Drive. So right next to them was a bowling alley, like you just mentioned before. Across the street at one point became Baldwin Ice Cream. That was right across the street from the taxi cab place. We would go there. Also, just in that whole area, it once again, it was a sense of community. Also, what was interesting was, going to 79th Street, I would always look forward to going to 79th and Rose, the Rose Theater. And when I was a kid, I had to make sure my grades were nice and tight. So I get my, you know, money to go be dropped off at the theater. Now I would go see Bruce Lee, you know, for like $1.50, you know, 3 Bruce Lee movies in a row, or the Pam Grier Film Festival, my personal favorite. So when Pam Grier was on, I would purposely go up there, get my popcorn and everything else, and go sit up front. Why'd I do that? I have no idea. I get up there, and it was just Pam and me. I didn't give a damn about anybody around me.
Right.
It was a good time. Also, I was remember, I don't know if anybody out there in your audience remembers, what was the name of the place of the clothing store that was right there on like 79th?
Was that Mr.
St.
Ebony's?
Lawrence?
Mr. Ebony's, yeah. I
think that was it. Ms. Ebony, correct. Thank you for telling me that, because I was scratching my noggin about what program, what store it was. They used to have live, quote unquote, mannequins in the window, and they would advertise the suits and dresses and would do the mannequin stuff. And we'd be out there just having a good time as children watching that happen. And just want to get these great memories. And as a matter of fact, if you check out, you've probably seen, of course, the movie Ali with Will Smith. When he's in the car, this news about Malcolm X being assassinated. It's right there on 79th and St. Lawrence and the Roads, and also the Roads Cleaners.
Yes,
that's a very unique architectural structure that we all seen over the years. Right, absolutely. And my grandfather, God rest his soul, had a great line of credit at Sears down the street. Man, look, they loved him walking in. It was like, oh, Mr. Brazil, we got some new craftsmen, stuff coming up. Everything he got was from Sears. The popcorn waffling, throughout the whole thing, getting your ice there. It was just some great memories. And we didn't have to go outside of our community.
Right down the street from Mr. Ebony's, there was a barbershop. It's called the Golden Shears. And the reason that was called the Golden Shears is because whenever, first of all, Erskine Coleman, who ran that facility, was the first barbershop in Chicago to cut natural hair. He was the very first. And he won the Golden Shears Award as a result of those hairstyles. They ended up raiding the place and accusing him of selling drugs, and they shut him down. But 79th Street was a viable strip. 45th Street, 75th Street, 79th Street, 35th Street. On 35th, we had the old Lewis Theater. And you talking about the Pam Grier. When I was going, it was only Flash Gordon and Elvis Presley movies and all the cartoons in the world. And our parents would drop us off, and we'd be there all day. And then they come pick us up at the end of it. We would see some of the movies over and over and over again. But it was a different time, and it was much more of a relaxed environment.
I'll never forget. There was a Jewish doctor by the name of Dr. Kaplan, and he had an office right at 79th and Evans. And Dr. Kaplan was a very popular doctor. My mother went to him, my aunts, everybody. And next door to Dr. Kaplan's office was a furrier on 79th Street. 79th Street, because keep in mind, Black people going downtown was not what we did. I know people that thought that 63rd and Halsted was downtown. I know people that 79th Street was their main thoroughfare, and anything you needed and wanted was on 79th Street. So to see our communities now with other people having businesses there, shops and businesses that really don't even make good sense. Why are you even here? We had everything we needed: furriers, tailors, doctors, dentists, whatever the case may be. Somebody like Dr. Kaplan was a stranger in our community, but because he was so popular, everybody went to him. But we had everything we needed in our community. Oh, matter of fact, somebody just put up what the name of the furrier was. Here it is. I'm going to put it across the screen. Yep. Because I remember as a little boy, my mother, we would leave out of Dr. Kaplan's office, or my grandmother, and they would go in there and talk about what furs they wanted and things like that. So I don't know. I just think it's strange that we had all of this and we've lost it all. And Ramon, do you ever think, our Chatham and neighborhoods like that will ever come back to that grandeur? Would the Obama Library be the catalyst for the change? Because, I'm a tenant of Chatham now, and I just kind of look, it's just a status quo, and I'm just kind of wondering, do you think that Obama Library would change that?
No, I don't. Regrettably, I really don't, because what will happen within that environment is that the land around there has already been purchased. They already have a plan for the destruction of the buildings that are around it, and them being replaced. And so you're not going to have a presidential library without enough parking, new residencies, and so forth. So I'm not really convinced that it's going to help with Black business. I will say what will help, and what's ultimately going to help, is when enough becomes enough. Like, when is enough enough? When is going downtown and somebody mistreating you or not paying attention to you going to be enough? Now, prior, when we had the businesses on the South Side, we didn't have to put up with it. We went downtown and somebody said, well, you can't try on something, and you can't try it on, you got to buy it and then just take it home and bring it back. Then we were able to go into our communities to these other businesses. So I think that with the millennials, with new people that are making purchases, they will begin to, if they can identify the fact that they really want to service their people, meaning that I want to build support from the folks in the Black community that actually have some money to spend, they will begin to build these communities in a way that we can sustain the businesses that should be around us. And I just don't think that the Obama Library is going to do it. But I do think that the more businesses that open up, like the Bop Center that opened on 79th Street, as they develop, as the bakeries are developing, it's going to change, but it's going to change because of anchor points. And what I'm calling an anchor is something that brings people into the community. So in LA, I ran Marley Gibbs production facility for a couple of years, and we were the first thing that was there, meaning it was an old building, but we opened the theater. It was 1,500 seat theater. Well, once she moved in, everybody started opening businesses all around it because they knew that any Friday night there was going to be 1,500 people coming into that theater. So somebody opened a coffee shop. Somebody opened up a eyeglass place, art galleries, the museum, a music center, all around that community because they knew that people were going to be drawn in. That, I think, will motivate us to begin to look at different ways. Okay.
Base, do you have a question for him at this point too?
It seems to me, and pretty much a common observation we just talked about, when you build something, they will come. So for example, you talked about how those businesses started to come around because they know you have patrons, you have people to be around there. And I think that's like you lead by example in that situation. I believe that sometimes talk is cheap. And I know that, we all talk and everything. We have to back up what we're talking about. And I think that today in particular, because we're living in strange days, because we're living in fearful times, words have to mean something and action has to mean much more than that.
It does. I'm sorry. And we also have to find commonality. So
yes,
if you want to open a shoe store, then you need to find somebody that wants to open a sock store, And so once you all come together, then you can say, okay, well, this is my niche, but there's a section of it that you can satisfy. So we really can work together. We don't have to, employ each other, but we have complementary services that will help each other's business. And the more we can look at things like that, the more I think, we will like if you open a restaurant, a hotel, and then I say, well, you don't have any food services, so I'm gonna open up a restaurant right next to your hotel because I know you're gonna have all these people, they're gonna have something to eat. We have to look at those kind of relationships and begin to form them so that we're not dependent on each other, but we're helping each other just by the mere fact that we're existing side by side.
Absolutely. There has to be more, if any time, being pro our own and not anti anybody else. Pro our own has to be the main definition and main mission statement for all of us involved.
It does. And then at the same time, we really do have to find people that we can help to nurture. And so every step along the way, we've got to find folks that are committed that like if they want to be in radio, I told somebody not too long ago that if you want to be a nurse, you think you do, go volunteer at a hospital, because until you smell the blood and you see it, you don't know whether you want to be a nurse or a doctor. You got to be part of that experience. And so if you want to be in radio, call Chat and say, I need some help. I can. This is the way that I can help you. I can get calls for you. I can do this, and have a contract where they will be accountable, and at the same time, you're helping them and they're helping you. You have to form those kind of relationships because at the end of the day, and this is something else that I tell students a lot. You can go to Columbia, you can go to the Art Institute, you can go to any of those places that you want to. You will not find your Blackness there. That's not going to happen. You will find technique. You will learn how to make a circle, how to make a square, if you're at the Art Institute, but you're not going to find Black art. That has to be found in the community with Black people. And so if you want to find a voice specific to the Black community, go downtown to the radio school. But when you finish with the radio school, go deal with Chat Daddy and be part of that thing and learning process, because that's what's going to make the difference for you.
I love it. I do. I want to ask both of you gentlemen, do you remember when Black folks did not live any further west than what? I remember when Black folks did not live any further west than Ashland. Then I remember when Black folks did not live any further west than Damon. And then, oh my God, we started moving towards Western. I when Ramon, what, going west, what street going west do you remember? Because my grandmother used to tell me about when they made people move so the Dan Ryan could be built.
And I was going to say the Dan Ryan. We couldn't go on the other side of Dan Ryan when I was growing up. It was Bridgeport. That's where Mayor Daley lived. And as a little league baseball player, I was like either 8 or 9 years old. No, it was 59. Okay, so the White Sox were playing for the pennant, 1959. We go to the ballpark as little league baseball players. We had our uniforms on. We were all 7, 8, 9 years old. The game is over. We walked out the wrong door. We walked out the door on the Giles side, on the west of the building, which was Bridgeport. My father, who was the coach of the team, and all these little leaguers, the entire community came after us with bats and bricks and ran us all the way across the Dan Ryan. That was my first exposure to racism. I didn't know what was wrong with these people. And so if you're looking at 35th Street, we couldn't go to Bridgeport. Now, when you move a little further south, yes, then you're talking about Western. At one point, it was Loomis.
That's too funny. Look, I grew up on Loomis, and you're right. When we came along, the white families disappeared, and we were one of the original people to live on South Loomis like that. You're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Calumet High School was white originally. A lot of people don't know the Wendell Phillips High School was the first Black high school after Reconstruction. It was the first Black high school in the city, and all of us were forced to go there until they built DuSable, and then it began to spread out after that. But no, those were. And Martin Luther King, let me go back to him. Okay, so Martin Luther King came to Chicago. I had a chance. I was 16-year-old. I had a chance to hear him speak. And he was Martin Luther King. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him. But he was king. He was eloquent. And I'm standing there listening to this Black man, and he is blowing my mind. And at the end of it, he said, and we're going to march to Marquette Park, to Gage Park, and to Cicero. And I said, this man crazy. And I went home because we knew what that meant in terms of the danger to Black people. We couldn't go to Marquette Park or 67th Street. We couldn't go to any of them. Keep in mind, the 1919 riots started at the 31st Street beach when Wendell Phillips High School students went over and white people accused them of putting their toe in the white part of the water. And hundreds of Black people were damaged as a result of that. And so this city has always been segregated. Hyde Park was always integrated. So if you wanted to live in an integrated community, you could go over there. But, I didn't have to deal with living around white people or even seeing them until I moved out of the city, because the reality is if you were on the South Side and we had everything that we needed, we didn't ever have to go to their communities for anything. Or other than, I'm going to use the term, if I piss somebody off, sorry about that, but we went to Jewtown.
Right. Well, that's on my list.
That's what my daddy called it, and I'm calling it Jewtown. But we would go there every weekend, and that's where all of our stuff was purchased. All our school clothes and shoes and so forth. It was, and you couldn't beat the Jewtown Polish sausage. It was.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm going to read off some things that people posted on Facebook today about their memories of Chicago. Kimberly Parker said, when parents could allow their children to go outside and play, all day until the glow of the street lights came on, and that marked the time when you had to go in the house. And she's not lying about that.
Yeah.
And if we disobeyed them street lights coming on, my mama would come out in that moo and start screaming down that street. And you better believe when she started screaming down that street, you had to bring your butt in the house. Somebody else, Wamelda Roundtree says the Jim Longsberg dance show on TV. Teenagers from Chicago would dance on the show. My girlfriend and I were on the show, and that was back in 1955. And that was before Soul Train, because Soul Train got its start here on Channel 26 on Saturday night. So whoever Jim Lounsburg dance show was, do you remember that, Pomone?
No, I don't.
Okay.
The first one I remember, like you said, was Soul Train when Clinton Gent did it, because he produced the show before Don Cornelius took over. And once Don took over and they moved to LA, it blew up. But it was Clinton Gent that did it originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other people said they remember Funtown, 95th and Stony Island Avenue. Some people said they even remember Old Chicago Amusement Park. As you guys all know, that was very popular. Let me see some other places. Frank's Department Store at 79th and Halsted. Right. Anybody remember? And they had the elevator where the person would work the elevator. They had elevator attendants at the time. You just didn't get in the elevator by itself. Base, you got some other memories of Chicago you want to bring up too?
Oh, look, because I worked there when I was in college, my Stells on Roosevelt and Wabash, at the 3-level clothing store, man, that place was fantastic. My mom always went there to shop. My mom got me the job there when I was in college. This actor, there was Sam Mystell, it was two brothers, Sam and Sidney Mystell. Sam was the guy at the first level that marked off everything you want to get 10% off, or that's the guy to go to. So my mom always went to him to get more off the price. So it's like, Sam, my son wants a job. All right, I'm gonna come here. Just that simple. And I got a job working in the men's department on the 3rd floor. That place was great, man. So then we talk about clothing stores. That's my first go-to.
Yep. Riverview was the place. I mean, it was the thing to do. So then I have fond memories of Riverview. As a matter of fact, right before they closed it down, so there was a tunnel of love, and you would get in this boat, and you would go through the tunnel, and it'd be dark, and you would make out with whoever you were with in the tunnel. And it got to the point where you would be riding through the tunnel, and there would be people that had gotten out the boats and would jump into the boats and then rob people. and that was right before they ended up closing. Yeah, but it was a good time. It was a good time.
All right. Tony Bond said the hoagie shop in Morgan Park. She said it was the steak sandwich with sweet peppers, fries, and mild sauce. Gwen Jones said Arthur Treacher's fish and chips. We talked about that. My friend Harold Black said Bargain Town, and he ain't never lied. It was a bargain town right on 87th Street, not far from where the old VON used to be. And Community. Remember shopping at Community? That was another place. Yes. Victoria Prince said watching Ray Rayner and Garfield Goose before school. I remember that. Phyllis Greer said the Martinique on 95th Street. I remember that. My good friend Bobby Hall, she said, remember lunchtime always consisted of a bologna sandwich. She said watching fried bologna, yes, and catching lightning bugs in a jar. Here's the deal. Where the hell are the lightning bugs now? I ain't seen a lightning bug in a million. So what happened? Did we kill all the lightning bugs off?
Well, you know what? We have a 1-year-old grandson who's here with us actually, and we took him out to Jackson Park, or his parents have, and there were a lot of lightning bugs, and I hadn't seen any in ages.
Right,
Jackson Park, yeah, I hadn't seen them in a long time. There was a lady, and if anybody remembers this, I really wish I knew her name. So Abbott High School is across the Dan Ryan. It's west of the Dan Ryan. And the little street there that's right behind the ballpark, right before you get off the ballpark, is Giles. There was a lady that used to have a house there on that block, and she would provide lunches. It was like a restaurant. You would go up to the back of door of her house, and she would have these cast iron skillets, and she would make hamburgers. She would wrap them in aluminum foil, and she would give them to you. And we would go to her. It was the best hamburger in the world. Don't know what her name was, but she used to sell it out the back door of her house. Yeah.
Wow, Bass, anything else you want to add to this before we wrap up tonight's show? This has been really good.
Look, when I was going to Kenwood Academy, and I would get home either by the 28th Stony Island or the 6th Jeffrey. It was this the 28th Stony Island. Get off at 79th and Stony, right across the street where the White Castle was. The lady who was the streetwalker with the big ass hats,
right,
and the clothes and everything else. That woman was a show by herself. And she would walk across the street, and I don't care how old she was, she had some nice legs. I mean, she really would work 79th Street. Those legs were strong and, muscular. And we would just talk all this garbage for and everything else. And she went back and forth. It was nothing, nothing malicious or like that. But it was the fact that we always look forward to seeing her in White Castles with those big, she made everything herself, she said, with the streetwalker hat and the outfit to match, eating hamburgers in White Castle.
The last time I saw her, she had on this gold leather outfit, the leather hat, the leather outfit, the leather boot. She was a sight and a personality. I don't know what her name was.
Okay, so gentlemen, I'm gonna tell you what her name was because I have a personal connection to her. That was the late great Miss Rosemarie Black. Miss Rosemarie Black was a famous exotic dancer or performer. Miss Rosemarie Black, was not the stripper that we know to this day, but because Miss Rosemarie Black had that pat out body, she used to dance for James Brown. She used to dance for people. She a lot of times would be a dancer on stage or a dancer between acts, but Miss Rosemarie Black was really a tremendously wonderful lady. She her parasol, not an umbrella, honey. Those were parasols. She would make her parasols. She would make her hats and her outfits. And Miss Rosemarie Black would never be caught without at least 3-inch heels or higher on. And Miss Black would stop traffic everywhere she went. Many years ago, I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue, the old Saks Fifth Avenue, and I worked on the first floor of the store. Miss Rosemarie would come in Saks Fifth Avenue, and you all know how on the display they would have these big old bottles of Chanel No. 5, these big old, those are called demi bottles. So really it's nothing but water in them, but they're there for display. Miss Rosemarie would come in Saks Fifth Avenue and go off because they would not sell her them demi bottles. She thought they were big bottles of perfume. And she would ask for the manager and say, honey, I know you don't, I can afford that. I want the big bottle up there. And so everybody was trying to explain to her. And that's how I got to know Miss Rosemarie. And I kind of went up, talked to her. I said, Miss Rose, it's nothing but water in those. I said, now here's the regular perfume. Well, baby, mama can afford that big bottle up there. I said, yes, ma'am, but it's just, decoration. It's not. So I knew Miss Rosemarie Black. And actually, when she died, I was the person who announced that she died. And this is like when Facebook first started, and thousands of people went to my page and talked about how they remembered Miss Black, to the point that Facebook reached out to me to ask me, was this lady a celebrity, an icon, or whatever the case? she met Oprah. Miss Rosemarie Black really is an unsung Chicago legend that really, and her family actually thanked me at her funeral for, acknowledging her like that. But she was a sweetie. Husband, children, all of that. And yes, but that was Miss Rosemarie Black, Miss Stony Island Rose. That's what they would call her.
I will remember. The only thing that I would say to people, and what is really so interesting about these stories, is that we have so many of them that it's important that it's documented and that it's told. And so I think it's tragic that when we go into certain places, we don't remember the strong history of the things that were there. So when you talk about what was the the nightclub where the the Rolling Stones, it was the first place they came when they came to Chicago. Was it Teresa's? Anyway, it was the one on 47th Street. So there's no sign of the fact that they were even there.
Checkerboard Lounge.
And the checkerboard, yeah. And so when you talk about the checkerboard at Arliss and all of these places, there, at the very least, there should be some kind of plaque that says this thing was here and it had this world impact, because it did. A lot of the nightclubs in Chicago, when people came to the States, they said, that's where I want to go. I want to go to 47th Street. They didn't go downtown. They didn't go to the north side. They came to 47th because they knew that that's what was going on. That's the place you had to be. So I hope that the young people that are coming up, especially the writers, the people that are interested in writing, will lock into telling our story in the way that they need to be told, and articulated in books for children, in books for adults as well as in movies and in theater. But we have a lot of wonderful stories that we need to tell, and we need to celebrate people for the contributions that they've made.
Pamone, in closing tonight, and everything that has happened with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, you know the stories just like we know the stories. As our Baba, what words of encouragement would you want to give us as a race of people, and what words of encouragement would you want to give this country from you, our Baba? What would you like to say?
The first thing I want to say to young people is that you have to find a method of protecting yourself, your family, and your community. And we have to stand up to be able to do that. One of the things that has been demonstrated over the last few weeks is the power or the organization of the white militias. They have been much more aggressive in terms of their attacking where we are. We need to stand up and set up a barrier of defense the same way that they have set up a barrier of attack. And that is not to say that we need to go directly to war and armed combat. But what we do need to look at is two things. We have an election coming up. And I know that everybody, one of the terms that I hate to hear is when people say that our ancestors died for the right to vote. I never use that term because our ancestors did not die for the right to vote. They died for freedom. And the right to vote was a methodology. It was a tool to be able to get to freedom. But a vote without freedom is a waste of everybody's time and energy. And so it's not enough to vote. You have to vote, but you have to hold all of our folks accountable, all the politicians, from the alderman to the mayor to the president. We have to be able to say to them, look, our streets are torn up. Our streets and communities are in bad shape. What are you going to do to make sure that is better? And we have to be active. We have to be actively involved. And for those people that want to sit at home and write flowery commentary about the movement and not join these young people, I would hope that you will decide to put that down, still write it, but put it down long enough to come face to face with some of these young people and listen to them first, and then share with them the knowledge that you do have that might make them much more successful. So that would be my simple message to this country. 400 years has been enough. 20 days was enough. We have been fighting for the reconstruction of our greatness since arriving on these shores. And you can only push a people so far. And so what we need to do is, and I know that sometimes people are looking at their guilt and not being able to face their guilt of what they've done to us with the expectation of us redoing it to them. But what we need to say to everybody in this country is that we all deserve a space in which we can successfully grow our families and develop our lives. And it doesn't take from you to be able to participate in our ability to grow, to move, and to progress. And so for those young white people that are out there, for those young Latinx that are out there, for whatever community that you're represented, but you can see truth, you can see when wrong is wrong. I commend you, and keep up the good work.
Oh my God, how beautiful was that? Bass, what do you want to say to our guest before we let him go tonight? This has been, I could sit here for another 2-3 hours because I really feel like I'm sitting at the feet again, of course, of a Baba. So Bass, what is it that you want to say to him before we say good night to him?
Oh man, I gotta come behind that.
Yeah.
Good night. Okay, ooh-wee. Okay, that's a loaded situation, man, but I'll give a shot at it. I think we have to obviously try to grow intellectually. We have to ask questions. There are no wrong questions to ask. We have to get through the barrier of our minds and quit being people that you bind to the stereotype of we're this and we're that. We are a great people. We're a lost people at times, but we are a great people, and we have to embrace our greatness. Nothing beats a failure but a try. You ask the questions. You have to be dogmatic, because right now, as John Lennon said, "A strange days indeed." This is what we're living in right now. It has to be an embracement and a connection of self, a connection of family, a connection of who you are. The question becomes, what are you prepared to do? Once we embrace it and find the answers, I said before, I'll say it again, with COVID-19, with the murder of George Floyd, and you got to throw in Breonna Taylor, and the rest of my brothers and sisters, this has become the reset for all of us. How do we reset and define it is entirely up to us. Use yourself as an example of change. Change won't come to you. You have to make change now, not yesterday. It has to be like now. As the old folks say, not now, but right now. Once we've embraced that and get on a common plane, we're able to take care of ourselves between now and the future of our children.
That was well done.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
A round of applause. Yes.
Thank you.
You did a good job. Pomone, I'm just so honored to have had you here tonight. Everybody just really has enjoyed this show. They said, great show. You really have helped me kick this series off. I can't wait to hear, I've invited people that are now doing studies and things about various communities and what they love and how Woodlawn at one point, was the place, and Chatham. And so, I really do appreciate you for this tonight. Do me a favor, tell everybody how they can find you, follow you, all of that good stuff, because you're always doing something great. And then do me a favor, when you're tired of that shirt, I need it. That's all I'm going to say. When you're tired of that shirt. Uh-oh, did we lose it?
I love it.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, you
Come on.
Yes, I did.
Uh-oh.
I did. Yeah. Okay, I got to take it off. Pictures up in Nigeria. Really is wonderful. Okay, so anyway.
Okay. I need that shirt.
You can find me on Facebook. My name is spelled P-E-M-O-N, or you see on the screen, R-A-M-I. Or on Instagram, or I have a YouTube channel with a lot of the film projects that I've done. Reach out to me. I'm always accessible, and I really enjoy hanging out with you, Chat, and Chris. Appreciate your being on with me. Thank you, and thanks for allowing me to spend some time in communications. I think it's wonderful, and just keep up the good work and keep the voice out there, because it's a strong voice, and we need it. You know, we need it more now than ever. And what you believe is what you hear, and you've got to have people that you respect enough to listen. You know, so keep up the good work, both of you.
Thank you, sir. God bless you. We
you.
appreciate you so much. We really do. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for our Baba, the one and only Mr. Pomone Rami. Yay! Good night, sir.
Yes.
All
Good
right.
night.
We love you much. Thank you. Talk to you
Thank you
later.
very much.
All right, boy, what a show, man. This has been a great show tonight. Bass, I don't know what to say. I'm getting ready to go lay down. I'm gonna eat me a bowl of Cheerios and go lay down. Right, because it's been a lot tonight.
That's right. Now I'm gonna go have me some Chinese food and definitely get the itis later. So this has been fantastic.
Yes, it has. Bass, tell everybody again how they can follow and find all of your great shows.
Oh man, well, thank you very much. Here comes the shameless plug. I'll take it. Go to Facebook.com and you type in Chris Bass. You see it right there, CHRIS. B as in broadcasting ASE. Also on Instagram and Twitter. But the most thing, get me on Facebook. And but be a part of what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do here is have a platform for us to exchange dialogue. You type, I read, and I watch. And we go back and forth. You catch me every Friday at 4 p.m. Central, right here on Facebook Live. Tell 5 of your friends and 6 of your enemies. And make sure you tell everybody that Baseline is in the air.
Oh, I love it. I really do. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of yet another amazing show. I need you guys to do me a favor. If you really do love this show and all of that, go to Facebook and subscribe to the Real Chat Daddy Show on Facebook. It's really easy. It's very simple. You'd be helping me out a lot. Most importantly, if you go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Real Chat Daddy Show, it's free, easy, simple. I do this show as a effort of love. This is a free show. This is free time for me, but I love my people. I want to keep people informed, and I want to keep the right guests in front of this very valuable audience. I consider you all very valuable. Thank you for all the comments on Facebook tonight, man. We've had so many comments. I love you guys. Oh, L. Stanley Davis. Oh, I love you. That's my good friend. Covet. Not your neighbor's shirt. Oh, that's too funny. I got to have that shirt. Stanley, Stanley, I'm gonna call you. You know that shirt he had on was a Chat Daddy shirt. You know I would wear that shirt in a heartbeat. That shirt was hot. Yes, it was. Oh, thank you so much for all of this. I love you guys. And don't forget, you can always go over to my website, therealchatdaddy.com. Please visit therealchatdaddy.com. We have just more accolades about this show. Bass, you did a great job as always. Whenever you want to sit down for that one-on-one interview with me, I'm excited. I'm honored, and I would love to do it. I really would. So, ladies and gentlemen, Chat Daddy will not be on the air tomorrow night. I have something that I need to do. Life is kind of picking up for me again. I promise you guys the show will not be going anywhere. And but tomorrow night I won't be here. But when I come back Monday night, we're going to talk about the impact that this pandemic has had on the entertainment world and how it has changed a lot for our theater world here in Chicago, as well as singers and all of that. And so we have a wonderful guest co-host Monday night who's going to talk about that. And then also we're going to have musical artists on the show who have all developed songs during this pandemic and in the current state of the world in which we're in. They're going to talk about how we can encourage each other, how we can support each other, and why they wrote these songs now more than ever to be able to get their message out about love and hope and all of that great stuff. And I really do appreciate you guys. A lot of people have Cash Apped me tonight. Thank you guys. That's beautiful. Again, this is an effort of love. A lady today thought I was stalking her in a parking lot. And so God knows that's not what I do. I talk to my people, and I encourage people to be their very best. On behalf of my co-host tonight, the amazing Mr. Chris Bass, better known as Boom Shakalaka, our wonderful guest, Baba, Mr. Pomone Rami. Great job tonight. We talked about Black Chicago, past, present, and future, as well as some of our fondest memories here in Chicago. I love you guys. guys so very much. Thank you. God bless you. Just do me a favor. Go to YouTube, share this show. Just share it. It does not cost you anything. Hit the share button, start a watch party, encourage people to watch this show. And that's all I have to say. All right, Bass, anything else before we get out of here, my friend?
Hey, man, thank you again. And hey, man, boom shakalaka to you and to everybody else.
Yes, God bless you, brother. I appreciate you. Great show tonight. Thank you, Chris Bass. And we are out of here. TheRealChatDaddy.com. I love you guys. Here we go.